Hi everyone and welcome to Slip and Learn. Today, we're taking you to the very top of the world, to explore the breathtaking heights of Everest and K2. From extreme weather and incredible challenges to the powerful reasons why people risk everything to stand on these peaks, this journey will change the way you see mountains forever. The Giants of Earth, an introduction to Mount Everest and K2. Rising above all other peaks on Earth, Mount Everest and K2 stand as the ultimate symbols of natural power, human ambition, and the extremes of our planet. Though they are often mentioned together, these two mountains are profoundly different in character, difficulty, and reputation. Understanding them begins with their sheer scale. Mount Everest, located in the Himalayas on the border between Nepal and China, is the tallest mountain on Earth, reaching an astonishing height of 8,848.86 meters, 29,031.7 feet, above sea level. Its summit represents the highest point a human can stand on the planet. Everest's immense height has made it one of the most recognized natural landmarks in the world, attracting climbers, scientists, and adventurers for over a century. K2, on the other hand, stands at 8,611 meters, 28,251 feet, making it the second highest mountain in the world. It is located in the Karakoram Range, on the border between Pakistan and China. While slightly shorter than Everest, K2 is often considered far more dangerous and technically challenging. It has earned the nickname the Savage Mountain due to its steep slopes, unpredictable weather, and high fatality rate. One of the most fascinating differences between Everest and K2 lies in their shapes. Everest has a more rounded summit dome, which, while still extremely difficult, allows for established climbing routes. K2, by contrast, is sharply pyramidal, with steep ridges and sheer faces that demand advanced technical climbing skills. There are no easy routes on K2. Despite their similarities in height, the experience of climbing these mountains is vastly different. Everest has become relatively more accessible over time, with fixed ropes, established camps, and guided expeditions helping climbers reach the summit. Each year, hundreds of people attempt to climb Everest during the short climbing season. K2 remains far more exclusive. Only a small number of climbers attempt it each year, and even fewer succeed. The mountain's remote location and harsh conditions make every expedition a serious undertaking, requiring months of preparation and exceptional skill. Another interesting fact is how these mountains were named. Mount Everest is named after Sir George Everest, a British surveyor who never actually saw the mountain himself. Locally, it is known as Sagarmatha in Nepal and Chomolungma in Tibet, meaning Goddess Mother of the World. K2's name is more mysterious. It comes from a surveying notation used during the Great Trigonometrical Survey of India. K stands for the Karakoram Range, and 2 indicates it was the second peak measured in that region. Unlike Everest, K2 does not have a widely used local name, making its technical designation the one that stuck. Both mountains exist in what climbers call the death zone, which begins at around 8,000 meters. At this altitude, oxygen levels are so low that the human body begins to deteriorate rapidly. Even simple movements become exhausting, and prolonged exposure can be fatal. This shared characteristic makes both Everest and K2 incredibly dangerous, regardless of experience. Yet, despite these risks, they continue to draw people from around the world. For some, it is the challenge. For others, it is the beauty, the science, or the desire to stand on top of the world. Everest represents the highest achievement in terms of altitude, while K2 represents the ultimate test of skill and endurance. Together, these two peaks are more than just mountains. They are legends carved into the sky, defining the limits of human exploration and the raw power of nature itself. The geological origins of Mount Everest and K2. To understand how Mount Everest and K2 came to dominate the skyline of our planet, we need to look deep into Earth's past, hundreds of millions of years ago, long before these mountains even existed. Their story begins with the slow but powerful movement of Earth's tectonic plates, a process studied in the field of geology. Around 200 million years ago, the land that is now India was part of a massive southern supercontinent called Gondwana. Over time, the Indian tectonic plate began drifting northward at an astonishing speed, about 15 to 20 centimeters per year, which is extremely fast in geological terms. Between India and Asia lay an ancient ocean known as the Tessis Ocean. For millions of years, sediments such as sand, mud, and the remains of marine organisms settled at the bottom of this ocean, forming thick layers of limestone and other sedimentary rocks. Then, around 50 million years ago, a monumental event occurred. The Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate. This collision did not happen suddenly but continues even today. As the two masses of Earth's crust pressed against each other, the sediments of the Tessis Ocean were forced upward, folding and rising to form the Himalayas, the highest mountain range on Earth, including Mount Everest. This process is known as plate tectonics, and it is responsible for shaping much of the Earth's surface. Everest itself is still rising by a few millimeters each year due to the ongoing collision of these plates. One of the most fascinating facts about Everest is that its summit is made of marine limestone containing fossils of ancient sea creatures. This means that the highest point on Earth was once at the bottom of an ocean. Imagine standing at the top of the world and being surrounded by rocks that formed beneath ancient seas. It's a powerful reminder of how dynamic our planet is. K2, while also formed through tectonic activity, belongs to a slightly different geological setting. It is part of the Karakoram, which, although connected to the Himalayan system, has a more complex geological history involving multiple collisions and fault systems. Unlike Everest, which is largely composed of sedimentary rock, K2 is primarily made of metamorphic and igneous rocks. These rocks were subjected to intense heat and pressure deep within the Earth before being pushed upward. This gives K2 its sharp, jagged appearance and contributes to its instability and frequent rockfalls. Another key geological feature of K2 is its position near major fault lines. The constant stress and shifting in these zones make the mountain more prone to earthquakes and avalanches. This geological instability is one of the reasons K2 is considered more dangerous than Everest. Glaciers also play a significant role in shaping both mountains. Massive rivers of ice-carved valleys transport rock and continuously reshape the landscape. Around K2 lies the vast Baltoro Glacier, one of the longest glaciers outside the polar regions. Everest is surrounded by glaciers such as the Khumbu Glacier, which climbers must cross during their ascent. These glaciers are not static, they move slowly but powerfully, grinding rock beneath them and creating deep valleys and sharp ridges. Over thousands of years, they have sculpted the dramatic terrain that makes both Everest and K2 so visually striking. Another fascinating aspect is that both mountain ranges are relatively young in geological terms. Compared to ancient ranges like the Appalachian Mountains, which are hundreds of millions of years old and heavily eroded, the Himalayas and Karakoram are still rising and evolving. This youth is why they are so tall and rugged. Even today, the forces that created Everest and K2 are still at work. Earthquakes occasionally shake the region, sometimes altering the landscape dramatically. The mountains are not fixed monuments. They are living, changing structures shaped by immense natural forces. In a way, Everest and K2 are not just mountains, they are ongoing geological events. Their towering heights are the result of millions of years of movement, pressure, and transformation, a slow but unstoppable process that continues to shape our world. Climate and extreme weather conditions on Mount Everest and K2. High above the Earth, where the atmosphere thins and temperatures plunge far below freezing, Mount Everest and K2 exist in one of the most hostile climates on the planet. These mountains are not only defined by their height but by the extreme and unpredictable weather systems that constantly shape life and survival on their slopes. At elevations above 8,000 meters, both peaks enter what climbers call the death zone. Here, The air contains only about 1/3 of the oxygen available at sea level. This lack of oxygen affects not only the human body but also weather behavior. Storms form rapidly, winds intensify without obstruction, and temperatures can drop to life-threatening levels within minutes. On Everest, temperatures at the summit can fall below -60 degrees Celsius (-76 degrees Fahrenheit) during winter. Even in the climbing season, which typically occurs in late spring, temperatures often remain between -20 degrees Celsius and -40 degrees Celsius. Despite these already extreme conditions, the most dangerous factor is often the wind. The mountain lies directly in the path of the powerful jet stream, a high-altitude river of air that can produce winds exceeding 160 km per hour, 100 miles per hour. When the jet stream shifts northward for a short period each year, climbers seize the opportunity to attempt the summit. This narrow window, sometimes lasting only a few days, is the difference between success and failure. Outside of this window, the mountain becomes almost impossible to climb due to relentless winds and freezing conditions. K2, however, presents an even harsher and more unpredictable climate. Unlike Everest, which benefits from somewhat more stable seasonal patterns, K2 is notorious for sudden and violent storms. Its location in the Karakoram exposes it to complex weather systems that can change without warning. Temperatures on K2 can be just as cold as Everest, but the real danger lies in its volatility. Clear skies can quickly give way to blizzards, with heavy snowfall and fierce winds trapping climbers high on the mountain. These storms often last for days, cutting off visibility and making navigation nearly impossible. Another major threat on both mountains is wind chill. Even if the actual air temperature is survivable, strong winds can make it feel dramatically colder, increasing the risk of frostbite in minutes. Exposed skin can freeze almost instantly, and climbers must wear specialized gear to protect themselves from these conditions. Snowfall also plays a critical role in shaping the dangers of Everest and K2. Fresh snow can create unstable layers on steep slopes, leading to avalanches. On Everest, areas like the Khumbu Icefall are constantly shifting, with towering blocks of ice that can collapse without warning. On K2, narrow couloirs and steep faces become deadly traps when snow accumulates. Cloud formation at high altitudes adds another layer of complexity. Lenticular clouds, smooth, lens-shaped formations, often appear near the summits. These clouds are visually stunning but signal strong winds and turbulent air. Experienced climbers recognize them as warnings of incoming storms. One of the most fascinating aspects of high-altitude weather is how quickly it can change. At lower elevations, weather systems may take hours or days to develop. On Everest and K2, conditions can shift in a matter of minutes. A clear, calm morning can turn into a whiteout by afternoon, leaving climbers disoriented and exposed. The sun, too, behaves differently at extreme altitudes. With less atmosphere to filter radiation, ultraviolet exposure is significantly stronger. Snow reflects sunlight, intensifying its effects and increasing the risk of snow blindness and severe sunburn. Climbers must protect their eyes and skin even in freezing temperatures. K2's steeper terrain amplifies the impact of weather. Strong winds hit the mountain's sharp ridges and are forced upward, creating turbulence and sudden gusts that can knock climbers off balance. Combined with technical climbing sections, this makes even small weather changes extremely dangerous. In contrast, Everest's more gradual slopes allow for established camps and routes, but this does not make it safe. The mountain's size means that climbers spend more time exposed to extreme conditions, increasing the risk of exhaustion, hypothermia, and altitude sickness. Ultimately, the climate of Everest and K2 is not just a background element, it is one of the main challenges climbers face. These mountains create their own weather systems, shaped by altitude, geography, and atmospheric forces. Success depends not only on strength and skill but on timing, patience, and respect for nature's power. In this frozen world of wind and ice, survival is never guaranteed. Every step toward the summit is a negotiation with the elements, where even the smallest miscalculation can have fatal consequences. The history of exploration and first ascents of Mount Everest and K2. Long before climbers stood on their summits, Mount Everest and K2 were distant, mysterious giants, barely understood and rarely seen by the outside world. Their exploration is a story of ambition, tragedy, national pride, and human endurance, stretching across more than a century. The first step in this story was not climbing, but measurement. In the 19th century, British surveyors working on the Great Trigonometrical Survey of India began mapping the highest peaks of the Himalayas. In 1852, Everest, then known as Peak 15, was identified as the tallest mountain on Earth. It was later named after George Everest, although he himself never saw the mountain. Early attempts to explore Everest were limited by politics as much as geography. Nepal was closed to foreigners, so initial expeditions approached from Tibet. In the 1920s, British teams began pushing higher up the mountain than anyone had before, entering truly unknown territory. One of the most legendary figures of this era was George Mallory. When asked why he wanted to climb Everest, he famously replied, "Because it's there." In 1924, Mallory and his climbing partner Andrew Irvine made a bold attempt to reach the summit. They were last seen high on the mountain, just below the summit ridge, before disappearing into the clouds. To this day, it remains one of mountaineering's greatest mysteries whether they reached the top before perishing. It wasn't until 1953 that Everest was officially conquered. On May 29th, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay successfully reached the summit via the South Col route. Their achievement marked a turning point in human exploration and became one of the most celebrated accomplishments of the 20th century. Unlike Everest, K2 proved far more resistant to early attempts. First surveyed in 1856, it quickly gained a reputation as one of the most difficult mountains in the world. Early expeditions in the late 19th and early 20th centuries struggled even to find viable routes to the summit. The first serious attempt to climb K2 came in 1902, led by Oscar Eckenstein and Aleister Crowley. The expedition lasted several months but failed due to extreme weather, illness, and the sheer difficulty of the terrain. Throughout the 1930s, multiple expeditions attempted K2, each pushing slightly higher but ultimately turning back. The mountain seemed almost unconquerable, earning its fearsome reputation. Finally, in 1954, just 1 year after Everest's first ascent, K2 was successfully climbed by an Italian expedition led by Ardito Digio. The two climbers who reached the summit were Achille Companoni and Lino Lacedelli. Their route, known as the Abruzzi Spur, remains the most commonly used path to the summit today. However, the success of the K2 expedition was not without controversy. Disputes over credit, decisions made during the climb, and the treatment of team members created tension that lasted for decades. This added another layer of complexity to K2's already dramatic history. One striking difference between the two mountains is how quickly they were climbed after being identified. Everest, despite its height, was summited relatively sooner than K2 after serious attempts began. K2's technical difficulty, harsher weather, and more dangerous terrain made it far more resistant to human efforts. Another fascinating aspect of early exploration is the role of local communities. Sherpas from Nepal played a crucial role in Everest expeditions, providing knowledge, support, and incredible physical endurance. Tenzing Norgay himself became a global symbol of this contribution. On K2, climbers relied heavily on high-altitude porters from regions of Pakistan, whose efforts were equally vital but often less widely recognized in early accounts. The early history of these mountains is also marked by tragedy. Many climbers lost their lives in the pursuit of reaching the summit, highlighting the immense risks involved. Each failed attempt, however, contributed valuable knowledge about routes, weather patterns, and survival at extreme altitude. These early explorers were venturing into the unknown without modern equipment, accurate weather forecasts, or advanced climbing technology. Their achievements were not just physical but also psychological, pushing the limits of what humans believed was possible. Today, Everest and K2 are no longer mysteries on the map, but their history continues to inspire. The stories of those who first dared to climb them remain powerful reminders of curiosity, courage, and the enduring human desire to explore the highest places on Earth. Routes, camps, and the climbing experience on Mount Everest and K2. Climbing Mount Everest or K2 is not a single continuous ascent but a carefully planned journey divided into stages, camps, and strategic decisions. Each step upward requires adaptation, patience, and precise timing. While both mountains demand extreme endurance, the routes and overall climbing experience differ dramatically. On Everest, the most commonly used path is the South Col route, which begins in Nepal. Climbers first arrive at Everest Base Camp, located at around 5,364 meters. This is not just a starting point, it becomes a temporary village filled with tents, communication systems, and support teams. From here, climbers spend weeks acclimatizing to the altitude before attempting higher camps. The first major obstacle above base camp is the Khumbu Icefall. This constantly shifting maze of ice towers, crevasses, and unstable ladders is one of the most dangerous sections of the entire climb. Climbers must pass through it in the early morning when colder temperatures make the ice more stable. Beyond the icefall lies Camp I, followed by the Western Khum, a wide, glacial valley surrounded by towering peaks. Despite its beauty, this area acts like a solar oven, trapping heat and exhausting climbers as they move toward Camp II. Camp III is established on the steep face of the Lhotse Wall, where climbers begin using fixed ropes to ascend icy slopes. Above this lies Camp IV on the South Col, the final staging point before the summit push. From here, climbers enter the death zone and begin their final ascent, often at night, aiming to reach the summit at sunrise. The Everest route, while extremely challenging, is relatively structured. Fixed ropes, ladders, and established camps make it more predictable, and many climbers rely on experienced guides to navigate the mountain. K2, however, offers a completely different experience. Its most common route, the Abruzzi Spur, begins from base camp in Pakistan. Unlike Everest, K2's base camp is far more remote and difficult to reach, requiring days of trekking across glacier such as the Baltoro Glacier. From the very beginning, K2 demands technical climbing. The route includes steep rock faces, exposed ridges, and narrow passages where every movement must be precise. Camps are fewer and less developed than on Everest, and climbers must often fix their own ropes and carry more of their own equipment. One of the most infamous sections of K2 is the House's Chimney, a near-vertical rock feature that requires advanced climbing skills. Higher up lies the Black Pyramid, a complex and dangerous section of mixed rock and ice climbing that tests even the most experienced mountaineers. Near the summit lies the Bottleneck, a narrow, steep couloir beneath a massive overhanging ice serac. This is widely considered one of the most dangerous points on any mountain in the world. Climbers must pass quickly beneath unstable ice that can collapse without warning. Unlike Everest, where climbers often follow a well-established path, K2 requires constant decision-making. Routes can change from year to year due to weather and shifting ice, and there is far less infrastructure to rely on. This makes the climb more unpredictable and mentally demanding. Another major difference lies in the climbing style. Everest expeditions are often highly organized, with large teams, support staff, and logistical planning. K2 expeditions tend to be smaller, more independent, and more reliant on each climber's skill and judgment. Acclimatization is critical on both mountains. Climbers follow a climb-high, sleep-low strategy, repeatedly ascending to higher camps and returning to lower altitudes to allow their bodies to adjust. This process can take weeks and is physically exhausting, even before the final summit attempt. The summit push itself is one of the most intense experiences in mountaineering. Climbers leave their highest camp late at night, moving slowly in darkness, guided by headlamps. Every step requires effort due to the lack of oxygen, and even simple tasks become incredibly difficult. On Everest, climbers pass landmarks such as the Hillary Step before reaching the summit ridge. On K2, the final ascent is steeper, more exposed, and often more dangerous, with no clear resting points. Reaching the summit is only half the journey. The descent is often more dangerous, as exhaustion, weather changes, and reduced focus increase the risk of accidents. Many tragedies have occurred during the descent rather than the ascent. Ultimately, the climbing experience on Everest and K2 reflects their personalities. Everest offers a structured but still extreme journey to the highest point on Earth. K2 offers a raw, unforgiving challenge where every decision matters. Both mountains demand respect. They test not only physical strength but also mental resilience, patience, and the ability to adapt. For those who attempt them, the journey is not just about reaching the top, it is about surviving one of the most demanding environments on the planet. Dangers, risks, and survival at high altitude on Mount Everest and K2. Climbing Mount Everest or K2 is not just a test of strength or endurance, it is a direct confrontation with some of the most dangerous conditions the human body can face. At extreme altitudes, survival itself becomes uncertain, and every step carries risk. Above 8,000 meters lies the infamous death zone, where the human body can no longer properly adapt. The lack of oxygen begins to break down vital functions. Cells cannot regenerate efficiently, decision-making slows, and even basic coordination becomes difficult. Prolonged exposure can lead to rapid physical and mental deterioration. One of the most serious threats climbers face is altitude sickness. In its mild form, it causes headaches, nausea, and dizziness. However, it can quickly develop into life-threatening conditions such as high-altitude pulmonary edema, HAPE, where fluid fills the lungs, or high-altitude cerebral edema, HACE, where the brain swells. Both conditions can be fatal if not treated immediately by descending to lower altitude. Another constant danger is extreme cold. Temperatures on Everest and K2 can drop low enough to freeze exposed skin within minutes. Frostbite is a common risk, particularly affecting fingers, toes, and the face. In severe cases, it can lead to permanent tissue damage or amputation. Hypothermia is equally dangerous. When the body loses heat faster than it can produce it, core temperature drops, leading to confusion, slowed movement, and eventually loss of consciousness. At high altitude, where energy is already depleted, hypothermia can set in quickly. Avalanches pose a deadly threat on both mountains. Layers of snow can become unstable and collapse suddenly, sweeping everything in their path. On Everest, areas like the Khumbu Icefall are particularly prone to this danger. On K2, steep slopes and narrow passages increase the risk even further, leaving little chance of escape. Falling is another major hazard. Both Everest and K2 feature steep ridges, icy slopes, and exposed cliffs. A single misstep can result in a fatal. While fixed ropes provide some, they are not foolproof, especially in extreme weather conditions. One of the less visible but equally dangerous threats is exhaustion. Climbing at high altitude requires enormous energy, yet the body struggles to absorb enough oxygen to sustain effort. Each step feels heavy, and progress becomes painfully slow. This physical fatigue can lead to poor decisions, increasing the risk of accidents. Dehydration is also a serious concern. The cold, dry air causes rapid moisture loss through breathing, while the effort of climbing increases fluid needs. However, melting snow for water is time-consuming, and climbers often drink less than they should, leading to weakened performance. Weather, as discussed earlier, can turn deadly within moments. Sudden storms, high winds, and whiteout conditions can disorient climbers, making navigation nearly impossible. On K2, unpredictable weather has been responsible for many tragic trapping climbers high on the mountain. Another psychological challenge is isolation. At extreme altitude, the environment becomes silent and empty. The lack of oxygen can cause confusion, hallucinations, and impaired judgment. Climbers may struggle to think clearly or recognize danger, which can be fatal in such a hostile setting. Despite these risks, survival is possible through preparation, discipline, and experience. Acclimatization is one of the most important strategies. By gradually exposing the body to higher altitudes, climbers allow it to adjust to lower oxygen levels, reducing the risk of altitude sickness. Proper equipment is also essential. Specialized clothing protects against extreme cold, while oxygen systems help climbers function in the death zone. Harnesses, ropes, and ice tools provide safety on steep terrain, though they require skill to use effectively. Teamwork plays a crucial role in survival. Climbers rely on each other for support, decision-making, and emergency response. In such an unforgiving environment, cooperation can mean the difference between life and death. Equally important is knowing when to turn back. Many climbers have faced the difficult decision to abandon their summit attempt due to weather, health, or timing. This choice, while disappointing, often saves lives. The mountain will always be there, but survival is never guaranteed. K2, in particular, demands absolute respect. Its high fatality rate reflects the combination of technical difficulty, unstable conditions, and limited support. Even experienced climbers consider it one of the most dangerous challenges in the world. Everest, while more accessible, should not be underestimated. Its height alone creates extreme conditions that can overwhelm even well-prepared climbers. In the end, climbing these mountains is not just about reaching the summit. It is about managing risk, understanding limits, and making decisions under pressure. Survival depends on a delicate balance between ambition and caution. These peaks stand as reminders that nature cannot be conquered, only respected. And in the thin air high above the world, that lesson becomes unmistakably clear. Modern climbing, tourism, and controversies on Mount Everest and K2. In the modern era, Mount Everest and K2 are no longer remote mysteries explored only by elite adventurers. Advances in technology, transportation, and communication have transformed high-altitude climbing into a global industry, bringing both opportunity and controversy to the world's highest peaks. Mount Everest, in particular, has become a center of commercial expedition climbing. Each year, hundreds of climbers from around the world travel to Nepal hoping to reach the summit. Guided expeditions now provide structured support, including logistics, equipment, fixed ropes, and experienced high-altitude workers known as Sherpas. This accessibility has allowed more people than ever to attempt Everest. Climbers no longer need to be elite mountaineers. With sufficient funding, training, and determination, many can join guided teams. Satellite phones, GPS devices, and detailed weather forecasts have significantly improved safety and coordination. However, this rise in popularity has also led to overcrowding. During short weather windows, long lines of climbers can form near the summit, forcing individuals to wait for hours in the death zone. These delays increase the risk of exhaustion, frostbite, and oxygen depletion. Images of crowded summit ridges have sparked global debate about whether Everest has become too commercialized. Environmental concerns are another major issue. Large numbers of climbers generate significant waste, including discarded oxygen cylinders, damaged equipment, and human waste. Efforts have been made in recent years to clean up the mountain, with organizations and governments requiring climbers to bring down their trash. Despite this, the environmental impact remains a serious challenge. The role of Sherpas has also come into focus. These skilled climbers play a crucial role in making Everest expeditions possible, carrying heavy loads, fixing ropes, and guiding clients through dangerous sections like the Khumbu Icefall. While many Sherpas are highly respected and well compensated, concerns have been raised about risk distribution, as they often face the most dangerous conditions repeatedly throughout the season. K2 presents a different picture. Located in Pakistan, it remains far less commercialized than Everest. Its technical difficulty and unpredictable weather limit the number of climbers each year. Expeditions to K2 are typically smaller, more experienced, and less structured. In recent years, however, K2 has also begun to see increased attention. Advances in gear and logistics have made it slightly more accessible, and successful winter ascents, once considered nearly impossible, have drawn global interest. In 2021, a team of Nepali climbers achieved the first confirmed winter ascent of K2, marking a historic milestone in mountaineering. Despite these developments, K2 retains its reputation as a climber's mountain. There are no easy routes, no large-scale commercial operations comparable to Everest, and far fewer safety measures in place. This preserves its raw, challenging nature but also limits who can attempt it. Modern technology has undoubtedly changed the climbing experience on both peaks. High-performance clothing protects against extreme cold, while improved oxygen systems help climbers function at altitude. Drones are now sometimes used for route analysis, and real-time weather forecasting allows teams to plan more effectively. Yet, technology has also raised philosophical questions. Some argue that these advancements reduce the purity of the challenge, turning what was once an extreme exploration into a managed experience. Others believe that increased safety allows more people to experience these extraordinary places without unnecessary risk. Another ongoing debate centers around permits and regulation. The government of Nepal issues a large number of climbing permits each year for Everest, generating significant revenue. Critics argue that limiting the number of climbers could reduce overcrowding and environmental damage, while supporters highlight the economic benefits for local communities. Media coverage has played a major role in shaping public perception. Documentaries, social media, and viral images have brought the realities of high-altitude climbing into global view. Stories of success, tragedy, and controversy spread quickly, influencing how people understand these mountains. K2, while less crowded, has its own share of dramatic events. Accidents, sudden storms, and high-profile expeditions often capture attention, reinforcing its image as one of the most dangerous peaks on Earth. At the heart of these discussions is a fundamental question: what does it mean to climb a mountain like Everest or K2 in the modern world? Is it still an act of exploration, or has it become a form of extreme tourism? For many climbers, the answer lies somewhere in between. The physical and mental challenges remain immense, regardless of support or technology. Standing at the summit still requires determination, resilience, and respect for the environment. As the future unfolds, Everest and K2 will continue to evolve, not only as natural formations but as symbols shaped by human activity. Balancing accessibility, safety, environmental protection, and the spirit of adventure will be one of the greatest challenges facing the mountaineering community. Why humans are drawn to the highest peaks, Mount Everest and K2. For as long as humans have looked toward the horizon, mountains have inspired a sense of wonder. Towering above the land, they seem to touch the sky, distant, powerful, and almost otherworldly. Among them, Mount Everest and K2 stand as the ultimate symbols of height and challenge, drawing people from across the globe despite the risks they present. One of the strongest reasons for this attraction is the desire to explore the unknown. Throughout history, humans have been driven to push beyond boundaries, across oceans, into space, and to the highest points on Earth. Everest and K2 represent the final frontiers of terrestrial exploration, places where nature remains dominant and unpredictable. There is also a deep psychological pull connected to achievement. Reaching the summit of Everest, the highest point on Earth, is often seen as the ultimate accomplishment in mountaineering. It represents not only physical endurance but also mental strength, discipline, and perseverance. For many climbers, standing on that summit is the realization of a lifelong dream. K2 offers a different kind of attraction. While Everest is known for its height, K2 is known for its difficulty. It appeals to those seeking a purer, more technical challenge, where success depends less on infrastructure and more on skill, judgment, and experience. For these climbers, the reward is not just reaching the top, but overcoming one of the most demanding environments on the planet. Another important factor is the connection to nature. High-altitude mountains offer a level of isolation that is increasingly rare in the modern world. Far from cities, noise, and daily distractions, climbers experience a raw and unfiltered environment. The silence, the vast landscapes, and the scale of the surroundings create a sense of perspective that is difficult to find elsewhere. At extreme altitudes, even simple moments become profound. Watching the sunrise from above the clouds, seeing shadows stretch across endless like ridges, or feeling the stillness of the thin air can leave a lasting impression. These experiences often become as meaningful as reaching the summit itself. There is also a cultural and symbolic dimension to these mountains. In Nepal, Everest, known as Sagarmatha, is considered sacred. In Tibet, it is called Chomolungma, meaning Goddess Mother of the World. These names reflect a deep respect for the mountain as more than just a physical object, but as a spiritual presence. Climbers often describe their journeys in terms that go beyond sport or adventure. Many speak of personal transformation, of confronting fear, discovering inner strength, and gaining a deeper understanding of themselves. The challenges faced on Everest and K2 can strip away comfort and routine, revealing what truly matters. At the same time, the risks involved add to the intensity of the experience. Knowing that success is not guaranteed, and that the consequences of failure can be severe, creates a powerful emotional landscape. Every decision carries weight, and every step forward requires commitment. Modern life, with its technology and convenience, has reduced many physical challenges. For some, climbing these mountains is a way to reconnect with a more fundamental human experience, one that involves effort, uncertainty, and direct interaction with nature. There is also the element of legacy. Climbers often follow in the footsteps of legendary figures like Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, whose ascent of Everest became a defining moment in exploration. Attempting these peaks allows individuals to become part of a larger story that spans generations. Yet, not everyone is drawn by ambition alone. Some are motivated by curiosity, others by the beauty of the mountains, and some simply by the desire to see how far they can go. The reasons are as varied as the people who attempt the climb. In the end, Everest and K2 are more than just destinations. They are mirrors reflecting human nature, our drive to explore, to achieve, to understand, and to connect. They challenge us not only physically but also mentally and emotionally. And perhaps that is the true reason they continue to call to us. Not because they are easy to reach, but because they are not. High above the world, where the air is thin and the horizon stretches endlessly, these mountains remind us of both our limits and our potential.